All right, Matt McGarry is in Baghdad right now, where Matt, what is the city mood right now? As obviously these insurgent forces are just a few miles away.
Well, I'm actually in northern Iraq right now, in the city of Erbil, and here, I mean, all over the country, it's essentially the same. The future of this country, the state of what this country will look like, continues to remain very precarious. You have elements from the Sunni insurgents, the ISIS group that stands for the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. These insurgents, as you know, a week ago just engaged on a sweeping invasion across this country, melting away the Iraqi security forces in their path. And now the Prime Minister, Nouri al-Maliki, is determined to launch a counterstrike, but so far he really has not been able to do much at all. And to make the situation even more complicated, it looks like a lot of the elements that are joining with the ISIS fighters are former Ba'athists, former fighters and generals who used to work for Saddam Hussein. So it is seeming like this situation here is fast approaching an all-out civil war.
What would you say the likelihood is that there could be any sort of resistance by the Iraqi government at this point to stem this tide without help from the United States or even Iran?
Well, they are very determined to launch a resistance. My colleague in Baghdad right now, Martha Radich, today went to a recruitment station. She said there were hundreds, thousands of young men signing up to fight against the insurgents, against the invasion. But she said a lot of them looked like they were in their late teens. Some of them, most of them looked about 19. Some even looked as young as 12 or 13. They're signing up. They're in a great fervor of excitement and passion. They're loaded onto trucks. They're given weapons, and they're being driven straight off to the front lines. So it remains to be seen how much effect that these emergency forces will have, or if they just turn into cannon fodder themselves.
What about these innocent Iraqis? So many of them are fleeing. So many of them are in fear. Are they wanting the United States to come in and help, or are they blaming our leadership for pulling our troops out of there, or their own government for this?
I think at this point, many of the people that we have spoken to, many of the refugees that have been coming out of Mosul, many of the people that are displaced are just simply frightened for their lives. They are not certain if they should be more afraid of the insurgents with ISIS, or they should be more afraid of staying in their homes and risking being bombed in counterattacks. I think, any deeper questions about who may be responsible or who should come in and help out at this point are beyond them. They're just trying to find safe haven.
And because of that, how are they getting food and water, and what's the living condition like there?
Well, they're trying to go to relatives and they're trying to go to friends. We did meet many people who had some place to go for a while, but we met just as many other people who simply had nowhere to go. The aid agencies, the NGOs are stepping in, and they're trying to get tents set up, and they're trying to deliver food to people who are just stuck out in the deserts. But then again, we did see quite a few people returning to Mosul as well, returning willing to live under this iron fist of the ISIS rule, because they simply had nowhere to go, and they thought, well, maybe it's better than nothing at all. So it's, the question of what's going to happen to all these refugees.
And Matt, isn't that exactly the point, that this ISIS group is coming through and they're incredibly brutal, but they're also bringing supplies in, and they're trying to win over these, or take over these villages essentially, with sheer brutality, but also with the carrot of food and water.
Yes, and as we've seen in the regions that they have controlled in Syria, that what they will do is they will come in, and as they have done, they have executed a good number of captured soldiers. That could simply be a tactic in order to frighten soldiers against fighting against them. It could be a matter that they're such a small force and they're on the move that they don't have the wherewithal to even take care of captured prisoners and hostages. Right. And as we've seen in Syria, once they gain control of the area, then they will slowly start bringing in a brutal Sharia law You will see a lot of repression against women. They will close schools for girls, and it will become a more intolerable situation for the citizens as time goes on.
So at this point, as you're there, are the people optimistic, pessimistic, just fleeing for their lives? I mean, can Iraq as a nation withstand this, do you think?
I think that the future of this nation is up in the air right now. No one has any idea what will happen. No one knows if the government will be able to fight back ISIS. And don't forget, they're being joined by a lot of insurgents too. No one knows if Iran will come in and help. No one knows if the U.S. is going to commit with airstrikes. And President Obama still says he has not made any decisions about what he will do. They have categorically ruled out, the U.S. has categorically ruled out working with Iran over any military action here. Yet there is an aircraft carrier group steaming into the Persian Gulf right now, loaded with jets that could be taking off at a moment's notice. So it's a very precarious situation. The future of Iraq looks extremely in doubt right now, and no one knows what will happen.
We keep talking about the United States' role, perhaps what Iran might do, but what about the other Arab countries and their responsibility? Saudi Arabia and some of the others, are they welcoming? Because traditionally they haven't welcomed people across borders, and that's been a big problem in the Middle East. How are the other countries, playing a role?
So far, I think because this has played out so quickly and the invasion has happened so fast, the other countries have not really spoken out yet. And interestingly enough, where we are right now in northern Iraq, it's the Kurdish-controlled region. And the Kurds, they are the third ethnic group here in this country, Sunnis, Shias, and Kurds. So far, the Kurds seem to be, they are staying out of this. They are minding their own borders. And what they're actually doing is they're incrementally now gaining more land and reconciling all of the claims that they have been battling with Baghdad over the years in courts. And now they are very quietly just moving troops forward. They were taking back, and to be honest, once they have that land, it looks like it'd be pretty certain that it'll be theirs. As far as Saudi Arabia and Iran, I mean, I think they're they're watching the situation very closely. Iran is terrified of having Sunni fundamentalists on their front door. And Saudi Arabia also is watching because they don't want Iran to come in. So everybody is watching, and they're very cautious. But this situation could spiral.
Matt, as a war correspondent, and you are in the middle of this in Iraq, of all the things that you've covered before, how would you rate your safety here? Do you feel imperiled being there?
Right now, in the north of Iraq, in the Kurdish regions, I would say I would rate my safety very high. The ISIS troops just bypass this. They don't seem to have an argument with the Kurds at the moment. They seem to be, they have Baghdad in their sights, and they've swept by this way on their way south and eastwards, and they're down now in the areas around the neighborhoods around Baghdad into Fallujah and to Crete. So here where I am, it's very safe at the moment, although anything could happen.
All right, Matt, thank you very much. Matt McGarry, ABC News, who was in Iraq right now. Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Matt.
Thank you.
All right. I just imagine the circumstance here, as this country has been war-torn now for, it was run by an iron-fisted dictator and now war-torn for the last decade. It's an unbelievably tough situation for the Iraqi people, but there are no choices. There are no good choices here because ISIS is almost undefeatable by this army. Then you have to, unless you get the United States and Iran to come in together, and Iran will have to cordon off the southern end of the country, in which they will eventually take over, and try to, and throw out the Sunnis and make that a Shia state as part of Iran. And then, to what degree can you keep ISIS at bay? And it's the center part of Iraq, which is always the principal issue here.
What struck me with Matt said is that you're standing there, you want to be in your home, you don't know who's going to get to you first, ISIS, or is there going to be a counterattack that could bomb your house?
Right. It's an untenable situation.